Hey guys, this is the 2020 Predator Triton 500, Acer's premium performance and gaming ultra-portable and a direct competitor for the ROG Zephyruses, the Stealths and the Blades out there. Last year's model has been competitive in this class, especially as it sold for less than its direct rivals in most markets. This 2020 version builds on the same chassis, with some minor tweaks in the design, build and keyboard, and includes updated hardware with Intel 10th Gen processor, faster memory, Nvidia Super graphics and a 300Hz screen. It also offers some of the better thermals available in this segment, but we'll get to that in a bit. First though, let's have a quick look at this laptop. The Triton is compact and lightweight at around 2.1 kilos. It's also one of the thinnest entries in its class and still offers a webcam above the screen on that slim bezel. Dark blue metal is used for the entire construction, but with a plastic inner frame. That's why the build quality is fine, but not spectacular. The chassis feels somewhat sturdier than on the 2019 model, but the screen is still weak, so I'd be careful when carrying the laptop in your backpack. Acer also stuck to a panel lit logo on the lid, but at least they took out the Predator branding, so this looks a bit cleaner now. The dark casing still also shows smudges easily, both on the lid and on the interior. Otherwise, this is a practical laptop. Grippy rubber feet keep it well anchored on a desk, the front lips and corners are blunted and friendly on the wrists, and the screen can be easily picked up and adjusted with a single hand. It also goes back all the way flat. This aside, the interior is perfectly neat, without any annoying lights and with the status LEDs pushed onto the sides. There is this turbo button that lights up when active, but that's only something you'll want to press when running games and other demanding loads. Still, you might have noticed that the Triton offers a fairly short armrest, as the keyboard is lowered towards the middle of the laptop in order to leave the top for these air intake grills. It didn't bother me, but those of you with larger hands might struggle here. This particularity also impacts the gaming experience, and we'll explain why later in this clip. Back to the exterior, the I/O is lined on the two sides towards the middle of the laptop, as the back is once more reserved for the thermal module. The Triton offers most of the connectivity you'll need, including LAN, HDMI, DisplayPort and USB-C with Thunderbolt 3. But there's no card reader, no USB charging or any kind of biometrics. This is however one of my favorite typers in this class. The keyboard is a fairly shallow implementation though, with soft keys that depress very easily, so it might not be for everyone. This sort of feedback makes this Triton 500 a quiet and very quick typer, but also one of the most unforgiving on straying fingers. You need to be a proficient typer to make this work with a very quick presses and actuation, otherwise it's going to punish you with high error rates. The layout is fairly standard with well-sized and spaced keys and without a numpad section. Instead, Acer includes this extra column of keys at the far right, which act as media and volume controls. Keyboard lighting is where the previous Triton 500 came short. This time around, Acer implemented per-key RGB lighting with very bright and punchy LEDs and 5 intensity levels to choose from. This can be easily tweaked and customized in the Predator Sense software. On the other hand, there's still no physical caps lock LED indicator on this keyboard, and the illumination still requires a key to activate and doesn't turn on with a gentle clickpad swipe like it should in this day and age. It might not seem much, but for me these are two of the Triton's most annoying quirks. For mouse, Acer went with a fairly standard glass clickpad, a synaptic surface with precision drivers. It's rather small, mostly due to the limited height of the palm rest, but works alright with daily use swipes and gestures. The surface still rattles when tapped a little firmer though, which shouldn't happen in this segment, and the click buttons are smooth but a tad clanky. Inputs aside, the 2020 Triton 500 gets the 300Hz IPS matte panel that's pretty much the go-to in this class right now. It's an excellent screen for gaming with fast refresh and response times. The Triton also offers G-Sync by deactivating the iGPU and further reducing input lag and ghosting. It's the old kind implementation that requires to tick an option in Predator Sense and reboot the laptop to switch between Optimus and G-Sync, but it does the job. This panel is also a great option for daily use with good contrast and viewing angles and fair colors and brightness, at 72% sRGB coverage and a little above 300 nits. It might not suffice for very bright environments, but it will do just fine indoors. The panel is well calibrated out of the box. However, light bleeding and color uniformity were an issue on this particular sample, and I advise you to look for them on your units as panel quality variation is, unfortunately, a random issue with modern laptops. Okay, let's talk some numbers now. Our test model is a top-spec configuration of the Triton 500 with an Intel Core i7-10750H processor, 16GB of DDR4 memory, 512GB of PCIe storage and dual graphics, with the Nvidia RTX 2080D GPU and the Intel UHD iGPU within the Intel platform, which takes over with lighter use as long as you're using the laptop on the Optimus mode. Acer also offers an 8-core i7 option for this laptop. However, the i7 on this unit is only a 6-core processor and a direct follow-up for the i7-9750H from 2019. It can run at higher clocks, but only as long as allowed by the power and thermal implementation. The configuration is complemented by DDR4 3200 MHz memory and dual SSD storage with RAID support. This can be accessed for upgrades, however that's easier said than done as the Triton implements a reverse design, so you actually have to take out the entire motherboard to get to the components hidden behind it. That's going to void the warranty and makes the Triton 500 one of the least upgradable in its class. As for the graphics chip, our configuration gets a Max-Q version of the RTX 2080 Super, running at different settings. It's overclocked and runs up to 100 W of power on extreme, which, as far as I know, no other 15-inch ultraportable allows right now. Predator Sense also allows individual control over the fan's behavior. Furthermore, pressing the turbo button activates the extreme profile and ramps the fans to their max speeds, lowering the temperatures and increasing noise levels to about 50 to 51 dB at head level. This Predator is in fact one of the best thermal designs in this class. With the fans on auto, the CPU and GPU average temperatures in the mid-80s and mid-70s respectively in games, with 46 to 47 dB of fan noise. Switching over to turbo further helps lower these temperatures, with the CPU dropping to 75 to 85 degrees and the GPU dropping to 65 to 70 degrees in most games. Finally, switching on normal quiets down the fans to about 42 to 43 dB, with only a roughly 10% dip in frame rates. Some of this heat spreads onto the exterior metallic chassis. For the most part, I have no complaints here, but the WSD key region hits temperatures in the mid to high 40s on the auto fan settings, which I found rather uncomfortable in longer gaming sessions. Switching over to turbo lowers this to much more comfortable low 40s. Acer's decision to place the keyboard in the middle of this design is what indirectly causes the WSD region to run hotter than on other laptops. Most of the other designs place the fans beneath the WSD keys, while in this case the GPU fans are placed higher and cool a less commonly used area. Onto our performance findings, we've run a couple of different tests on our review unit, from the standard synthetic benchmarks like Cinebench R20 or Geekbench, to Blender SpecView Perf or Handbrake, which simulate real-life work with professional applications and video encoding. We've also ran the 3D Mark test, both for the CPU and GPU, and gathered all our results in these charts. Feel free to pause to see how the Triton scored and how it stacks against some of the competition, and make sure to head over to the written article on the site for the more in-depth performance analysis and tests. I've added the link for you in the description. This Triton 500 also does a good job at maintaining top performance in longer duration loads. However, as illustrated by our Cinebench loop test, the processor needs to run at an average of around 65 W in order to return the results it does. Undervolting was allowed on this unit, both with XTU and with throttle stop, and we chose to lower the voltage to -100 MV for our tests to prevent any sort of stability issues. This resulted in a 7 to 12% increase in benchmark results and lower CPU temperatures in mixed loads, but overall there's still only so much you can expect from a 6-core implementation, and the available Intel and AMD 8-core platforms will deliver improved multi-threaded results. As far as gaming goes, the RTX 2080 in this notebook runs at between 80 to 100 watts of power on the various profiles. We've ran most of our tests on extreme, which allows the GPU to go up to 100 watt with the fans on auto, and we got excellent Full HD gaming experience with the highest possible graphics settings. The chip can also handle 1440p gaming and even 4K gaming to some extent on an external monitor. Still, this is our first Nvidia Super review unit, so we'll see how it fares against the 2020 competition in a future comparison once we get to test a few more products. Okay, so before we wrap this up, we should also talk about audio and battery life. Audio is ensured by a set of stereo speakers firing through grills on the underbelly. They get fairly loud at about 81 dB at head level in our tests and don't distort or vibrate on higher volumes, but they're not much in terms of quality, especially lacking in the lows. As for the battery life, there's an 84 Wh battery inside this Predator Triton 500. Make sure you're running on the Optimus mode, and also make sure to manually adjust the screen's refresh rate to 60 Hz. By default, this laptop keeps running at 300 Hz when unplugged, and that takes a significant toll on efficiency with video and daily browsing. We only got about 3 hours of multitasking and 5 hours of video by default, but these jumped to 4 to 5 hours of daily use and 7+ hours of video once we lowered the refresh to 60 Hz. Unfortunately, you pretty much have to do this manually right now in the control panel, and hopefully Acer will automate this in a future software update. Alright, let's wrap this up here. On a first look, this 2020 Predator Triton 500 seems merely a hardware bump of the 2019 model, but it actually improves on a few other aspects, with a slightly revamped keyboard that now offers per-key RGB control, a cleaner exterior design with fewer branding elements, and what seems to me like a slightly sturdier chassis. Compared to the previous generation, this Triton also offers better optimized power profiles and improved thermals. While the Predator Sense app takes some time to get used to, it allows mingling with the GPU and fan settings in order to juggle with performance, thermals and noise levels according to your needs. And while the fans ramp up to 50 to 51 dB at head level on turbo, these profiles allowed both the components and the Triton's chassis to run cooler than any of the other performance ultraportables we've tested. However, while this aspect should weigh heavily in your decision, I still feel that Acer needs to price the Predator Triton competitively in order to compensate for its quirks. And by that I mean that it needs to outprice them. Performance-wise, not much has changed between the generations, unless you opt for the 8-core Intel CPU configuration available in some regions. On top of that, the Triton also loses points due to its lack of biometrics, the lackluster speakers, the limited upgradability, and the fairly short battery life with that screen always running at 300 Hz. Oh, and make sure to check for panel bleeding. All in all though, the Predator Triton 500 is a good product and excels in the keyboard, screen and thermal departments, which corroborated with the aggressive price tag will make this a competitive option in its class. Anyway, this pretty much wraps up our review of the 2020 Triton 500, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this product. Get in touch with us in the comments section, hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to our channel to get notified when we publish new content. Catch you later.